Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine Bill Taylor and New York Times Pentagon correspondent Helene Cooper. Helene, bring us up to date from what the Pentagon is saying, because what we're hearing now is that a defense official today, one of the backgrounders over there, saying that Mariupol is still not in Russian hands, that the defenders are still holding them off.
Yeah, we just had a briefing at the Pentagon on this, and he said that the senior defense official said that Mariupol is still, as far as the Pentagon concerned, being contested. You just saw the report from Raf Sanchez about those fighters in the steel factory who seemed determined to fight to the last breath. And a defense official said to me last week that even, while everybody has been sort of expecting that Mariupol could fall at some point, even if it does, don't assume that the Ukrainians won't go back to try to take it as they've done in other places. So I think this battle, this fight for Mariupol that we're seeing is kind of emblematic of just this will to continue fighting. The Pentagon also said that in most of the Russian strikes have been in the east, with the exception of some airstrikes in Lviv. So you just covered that, and Kyiv. But we're seeing a lot of pounding as they get ready for this offensive that we're all expecting in the Donbass.
General McCaffrey, what is your explanation for why they hit Lviv? Was this a reaction to the sinking of the ship? What do you think is going on?
Well, first of all, I think they're putting the whole country at risk. They're trying to create terror and instability among the civil population. But Andrea, this war is now morphed into something new. This is a fight to the death by the Ukrainians, the atrocities, the civilian massacres, Putin's humiliation. The outcome of this war is in serious doubt. The only thing that's clear to me is that in the coming weeks, in the coming months, Ukraine has to now fight a new kind of battle, a war of maneuver and firepower that they're ill-equipped to do. So everything depends now on the coalition of the willing among NATO to get in technology and weapons that are qualitatively better than the Russians. That's the challenge in front of the United States and our allies.
But the U.S. has been saying that they're trying to get in Soviet-era weapons that they know how to use. This means a different kind of weapons. It means training. And also it's harder to get weapons in as the Russians hit the West.
Well, yeah, I think the cross-border movement is doing extremely well. U.S.-European Command, a U.S. four-star Air Force officer, and 15 other allied nations have pumped a lot of material. They're well organized. There's 10 flights a day, C-17 landing in 3 different airfields. So they're well organized. The question is, can we upgrade to 300 M1 tanks, the best fighting machine on the face of the earth, or do we give them T-72s that have the ammunition and the fuel stored both in the turret, and the thing blows like a hand grenade when you hit it? Can we give them HIMARS, a long-distance ATACMS 200-mile missile? That's the only way the Ukrainians are going to be able to beat back a Russian force that outnumbers in the air 5-1, and which has poor morale and poor leadership, but has mass. So it's a real challenge now. Somehow we've got to step up our game, or the Ukrainians aren't going to be able to pull us off.
And in fact, Ambassador Bill Taylor, the Prime Minister of Austria, told Chuck Todd on Meet the Press yesterday that he's the one European leader, the first one since the war started, to actually meet face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. And his assessment was that Putin thinks he's winning. Putin may be right in terms of the long haul.
Putin's not right, Andrea. Putin is not winning. As General McCaffrey just said, he's faced some real humiliation, some real defeats. I mean, he tried to go into Kyiv, and the Ukrainian military beat him back. He has his flagship destroyed down. His generals, 6, 7, 8 generals have been killed on the front line.
Another one this weekend.
And another one this weekend. And even Mariupol, no matter how it ends up, That's a hero city. That is, Ukrainians are going to say, remember Mariupol, and they're going to fight, just exactly as General McCaffrey said. They're going to fight till the end.
But the end could be that Russia can hold out longer. I mean, how are they going to get ammunition into them, to the people who are in that steel plant?
That's going to be real hard. And like I say, no matter how that ends up, that is going to be a symbol of Ukrainian determination and heroism. And the rest of the country will benefit from that, will be even further motivated. But the weapons are coming in, as General McCaffrey just said, weapons coming in very well from the West, from NATO. And those weapons are what the Ukrainian military is going to need to win this war.
In this Holy Week, we've also seen, it was Palm Sunday in the Orthodox Church, and so next week is Easter, and the Russian Orthodox leader is coming out on the side of Russia. How dispiriting is that?
It's unbelievable. It is, again, this just motivates the Ukrainians to see that the Russian Orthodox leader is supporting Putin, is supporting this military that's killing women and children. You've reported this. This is just, it's terrible. It's disgusting. And for that religious leader to support that, it's unconscionable.
And General McCaffrey, at this point, with the Russians hitting all parts of Ukraine, would you recommend a visit by a high-level U.S. official, if not even the president, which Zelensky said yesterday he wants?
Well, you know, the White House is going to have to think through this. It'd be utter madness for the President of the United States to go with the Vice President. If they were killed, it would open, all-out conventional war. So that doesn't make much sense. I'd be more interested in seeing 50 U.S. Marines and 100 of our diplomats get back into the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. I didn't think we should have withdrawn in the first place. Put a 40 by 40 foot U.S. flag on the front of it and be a presence standing behind these brave Ukrainians. The diplomats have enormous courage. This was a political calculation. We got to worry about hostages, et cetera. I don't think that's going to happen, but we got to get back in and be on the ground. I'm sure we're there with the agency. We need diplomats on the ground with a military liaison cell.
General McCaffrey, Helene Cooper, and of course, Ambassador Taylor. And we're going to have John Kirby from the Pentagon just a bit later in the program. And up next, Chef Jose Andres, the founder of the World Central Kitchen and owner of Think Food Group. Chef Jose, first of all, how are your staff members doing?
Well, unfortunately, some people on that explosion by the missile lost their lives. But the team members working with World Central Kitchen, we had 4 injured. And the good news is that they are doing okay. There you can see them in this photo. We were able yesterday to move the equipment that was safe to a track, and we moved to another location. And everybody wants to start cooking from that restaurant partner. So if it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. Those men and women, they have the very big willingness to say, nothing is going to stop us. We are going to start cooking as soon as we can. But again, we were not hit directly, okay? It was a very big missile that hit the building across. And because the missile was so powerful, the destruction was massive. Thanks God that no member of World Central Kitchen was damaged.
You've worked in earthquake zones, hurricanes, all kinds of natural disasters. Here you are in the middle of a war, a shooting war. And how is the spirit of all of your volunteers? It seems as though your people are so resilient, so dedicated.
Okay, I want to make sure that everybody understands. We have over 400 kitchens in entire operation. Not only, obviously, the biggest number are inside Ukraine, even we are in 6-7 other countries surrounding Ukraine, plus Spain. We have thousands of people working with us. We're doing 320,000 meals a day, already reaching 12 million meals. We've been bringing into and distributing inside Ukraine over 7 million pounds of food. I just came from operation of one of our 11 warehouses, where we have an army of Ukrainians, women and men and children, making these 25 pound bags that also, on top of the hot meals and the sandwiches, we are distributing to the people that are able already to cook on their own. I'm very proud because I feel one more person in this amazing group of food fighters that they are making sure that anybody that needs food, especially those cities, those towns that were liberated, that were for more than 30 or 40 days under Russian invasion, that those people, until the supermarkets reopen, until the normal flow, the normal life, even under war, until everything goes back to normal, we will make sure that nobody will go hungry.
I mean, it's just extraordinary. And as you point out, of course, in the neighboring countries, dealing with the refugees and feeding all the people who come over the border. Of course, there are places like Mariupol where nobody seems to be able to get anything in. And we can only imagine after more than a month, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, people must be starving there.
Obviously, Mariupol is a big humanitarian disaster. Thanks to a volunteer that risked her life, we were able to put many weeks ago, one time, 1,000 meals into Mariupol, but the risk is just enormous. But it's even in places like Kherson that they are under Russian control, we have kitchens and chefs that they manage to be uniting, cooking in the bunkers and making sure that especially the elderly, pregnant women, children are able at least to have a humble piece of bread and a humble plate of food. Mariupol, we cannot imagine. The numbers is still 100,000 people there. Obviously, we are in Zaporizhzhia, which is one of the biggest cities closer to Mariupol. We are there with restaurants. We are feeding people as they leave, not only Mariupol, but other places of Donbass. And I pray to God that is a truth made between Russians and Ukrainians, the United Nations, and that one day, maybe soon, we can go in quickly and try to bring the necessary food to those men and women that are going through much suffering. That's what we are here for, to make sure that we think ahead and that we are always ready to adapt to the situation. Today, I got reports that for the first time since the war began, more people crossed into Ukraine that left Ukraine. This is good news, but this is not so good news because we have the mayors of some of the major cities saying, please don't come back yet. We're still at war. Please be careful in a lot of towns. If you go back, it's mines. Give us time to demine. Give us time to make sure that everything is safer. But this is the will of the Ukrainian people. They want to be in their country, not because they want to use enjoy life. They want to be here because everybody seems they have the mission of fighting the good fight. Yes, it's men and women in the front lines, but everybody else is doing something to take care of their fellow Ukrainians.
It's just extraordinary. Just your supply chain is amazing, given that you're still operating in a place where you never know where the next missile is going to hit, as you know so sadly from those who died in this latest hit and those of your team who are injured. Stay safe. Many blessings to you during this Holy Week. Thank you so much, Chef Jose Andres.
And let's pray for the people of Ukraine, all of us, and let's support President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people. Let's do it. Let's support them.
The world is gathering, and the outpouring is just extraordinary, symbolized by you and what your people are doing. Thank you again. And midterm marketing, how Donald Trump could blow Republican super PACs who are buying millions in ads just out of the water. Stay with us for that. Andrea Mitchell reports on MSNBC. Former President Trump is celebrating the retirement of yet another House Republican who voted to impeach him. Veteran Michigan Republican Fred Upton is joining 3 others who decided not to seek re-election. 5 more Republicans who stood up to Trump are being primaried. On Meet the Press Sunday, Congressman Upton predicted that Republicans will take the House, but warned that a slim majority in the House for them could spell trouble for the party getting anything done.
A lot depends upon what happens in November. I do believe that the House is going to flip.
So a small majority, does that make it more likely if it's a smaller Republican majority?
Yeah.
And you think that's more trouble?
More trouble. It will be very hard to govern for Republicans if we're under 230, knowing that we've got the MTG element that's really not a part of a governing majority.
to say the least. Joining me now is Pulitzer Prize-winning presidential biographer Jon Meacham. His new daily podcast is titled Reflections of History. Also with us today, USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page and Politico White House Bureau Chief Jonathan Lemire, host of Way Too Early right here on MSNBC. So, Jon Meacham, let's talk about Donald Trump. I know, before you protest, the sway that he still holds over the party is the reality that 9 out of 10 who voted to impeach him are either leaving the House or being primaried. The New York Times is now reporting on the pilgrimage of candidates to Mar-a-Lago for his endorsement. We've got sort of chapter and verse as to what those strange appearances are. What is your take on this? That Republicans are not happy with him in decreasing numbers or supporting him, but he still has this hold on people.
He does, and it's part of an autocratic trend within the Republican Party. There are voices in the Republican Party that are trying to manage this, but they're not able, we've seen this from 2015 forward, they're actually not able to break the hold that Trump has on the broad base of the party. And I think it makes Representative Cheney's primary enormously important out in Wyoming. Liz Cheney is someone who has stood up for the Constitution over her own political future here, at least in the short term. And if she is able to prevail, then she's an example of someone who was able to stand up for the rule of law, stand up for a conversation that is at least somewhat coherent in American politics against this, really autocratic cult of personality that has come to prevail in a party that would not nominate the last 3 or 4 people before Trump that they nominated for president. And so the battle within the party is enormously important, not simply for Republican politics, but because of the constitutional structure that we have, we need 2 rational political parties. And right now, we only have one.
And in fact, Susan Page, we've seen in the White House relationship with the Hill what a 50-50 Senate can do. So if you don't have a governing majority, you really have trouble getting anything done in one house, the other, or both, potentially.
Yes, you do, although I think Republicans are hopeful they're going to have significantly bigger majorities than that, especially in the House. Congressman Upton talked about what happens with a narrow majority. Republicans are now increasingly confident they're going to have a really sizable majority, one that enables them to take charge. Not really to get things done, because presumably anything they pass, President Biden might veto, but enough to get some things done, to launch investigations. The Senate is a tougher call for the Republicans. The Senate can sometimes be more resistant to these wave elections, but there's still concern that Democrats may lose both houses of Congress in November. And with that, the difficulties for the Biden White House just become exponentially harder.
And Jonathan Lemire, you have some new reporting in Politico today that the president is trying to pivot to talk more about domestic issues that, the White House has been, and he has been consumed by Ukraine, but they really want to get out there more. We're seeing that he's going to New Hampshire tomorrow. He was in Iowa last week. He's got a couple of trips this week. So he's trying to focus on some of those big domestic issues like inflation. But there, again, he's getting caught between different wings of the party on the environmental issues that are in conflict with his fossil fuel focus, as well as the immigration fight that is looming on May 23rd when Title 42 is lifted. And it's bad right now, but the migration flow is going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, senior administration officials tell me in a piece that did, in fact, just post a few moments ago that, obviously the last 50 plus days, the president's focus has been Ukraine. That's not going to change. That war in Eastern Europe is not going to be ending anytime soon, and that's going to remain front of mind. But they need to be able to show the president tending to matters at home as well, a renewed focus on domestic issues. You mentioned he was on the road a couple of times last week, Iowa and North Carolina. He's off to New Hampshire tomorrow, a Pacific Northwest swing at the the end of the week, doing a combination of things. First of all, simply being out there and saying to Americans that he understands their pain, that he understands that inflation is high right now, gas prices are high. There's a sense of real discontent across the nation as we slowly emerge from this pandemic, although, of course, we've got cases rising again, at least in the Northeast, and that he is trying his best to help. It's a combination of small measures right now, what he can do by executive order on some domestic issues. There doesn't seem to be a big sweeping possibility for legislation going forward, though they are trying to revive pieces of the bill, what used to be known as the Build Back Better Act. But it's also going to be sort of reinforcing and doing a better job selling what he's already accomplished. The bipartisan infrastructure deal is going to get a lot of airtime in the next few weeks. The COVID relief fund as well, that he's saying, look, we've already made a difference in your lives and we can keep doing so. But you're right. A lot of his priorities are going to be put by the wayside here due to the political realities of the moment and the fact that midterm elections are approaching so rapidly. And certainly Democrats right now, very worried.
And Jon Meacham, let's talk about the money for a moment. You've got 4 Senate Democratic incumbents in competitive races. They've got $67 million on hand. But then there's a super PAC aligned with Mitch McConnell, who is booking $141 million in ads for Senate candidates. The House Democratic incumbents are ahead with money on hand in competitive seats. So, Susan Page, maybe you want to jump in on the money part of this.
Well, money is important, but money isn't sufficient. And it looks like both sides are going to have enough money to wage these big contests in competitive states. If you live in one of these states, you may want to turn off your TV the last few months of the year before the midterms, because all you're going to be seeing are political ads. But if there is a wave in this country, a concern about things like inflation, a feeling that the immigration is out of control, some of these issues that really cut against Democrats, money is not enough to save you from the consequences of that. So both sides look pretty well funded to me as we head into the last 6 months or so of this midterm campaign.
Susan Page, thank you so much. And Jon Meacham, of course, and to Jonathan Lemire. And escalating attacks. The Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby is going to be joining me momentarily on Russia's latest strikes in western Ukraine and the 7-week siege of Mariupol. This is Andrea Mitchell reports on MSNBC. Russia has launched a fatal cruise missile attack on what was thought to be a safe haven in Lviv near the Polish border. This, along with attacks outside of Kyiv, are a reminder of Russia's military power, even as it is regrouping for what is expected to be a major assault in eastern Ukraine. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby joins me now. So first, let's talk about western Ukraine and Lviv. And what do you think, the strategy here is? Is this to tell people after the sinking of the Moskva that we're still here, we can hit you anywhere?
It's difficult to know exactly what Russian thinking is here with respect to their targeting, Andrea, but clearly they hit targets over the weekend in Lviv, and they also launched some airstrikes into Kyiv itself as well. What we think they're doing is going after military or military-related targets. Again, we don't have perfect visibility, and we're trying to get an assessment of the damage done here to what. But we think they're specifically going after military or military-related targets in these two. But by and large, Andrea, over the course of the last couple of days, the most prevalent airstrikes that they've conducted, as well as artillery, still is in the Donbass, the eastern part of the country, and absolutely down near Mariupol, in and around the city.
And what is going on in Mariupol? Do we know anything more about how many people are surviving? How are those Ukrainian forces doing in the steel plant?
Unfortunately, we don't have a good sense of the casualties in Mariupol, although we certainly would expect that the numbers will be sizable and definitely sobering. But we do assess that Mariupol remains contested, that Ukrainian forces are in the city. They are still defending as best they can the city. The Russians have not been able to take it. And I think that accounts for, again, the increased activity in the air and through artillery strikes on Mariupol by the Russians. They very much want to take Mariupol so they can get that land bridge to Crimea, so that they can then put more pressure to the north in the Donbass.
There are new reports today from Ukrainian military officials that there are some signs the Russian offensive in the east is already beginning. What are you seeing from Russian forces in Kharkiv, Donetsk, those areas?
In Kharkiv, we still assess that the Russian forces are outside the city, around it. They've stayed around it. Now, Kharkiv is becoming a victim now to more artillery and strikes over the last few days. We have seen that for sure. But in the Donbass, it's important to remember, Andrea, this is an area of Ukraine that has seen heavy fighting for the last 8 years. It's been a hot war in the Donbass, but we have seen some heavy fighting south of a town called Izium, and certainly in areas near a town called Popasna. So there's been some heavy fighting in the last couple of days in the Donbass particularly. And we have also seen the Russians move in elements to help them sustain that kind of fighting. So command and control enablers, helicopter support, some additional artillery. So the Russians are clearly trying to continue to shape that environment, set the conditions so that they can conduct longer-term military offensive operations in the Donbass. But again, the Ukrainians are fighting bravely and valiantly in the Donbass, as they have for the last 8 years, as they have since the invasion began, and we're doing everything we can to try to get them more assistance as fast as possible.
How quickly can we train the Ukrainian troops, the forces, to use the howitzers, for example? We're increasing the training outside of Ukraine, obviously.
Yeah, we're working on that right now, and we think we'll be able to start some basic training on the howitzers outside of Ukraine, and it'll be more of a train the trainers environment. So we'll be training a small number of Ukrainian forces that will then go back in and train their colleagues, and we think we'll be able to do that in relatively short order. And they are already used to using howitzer systems, artillery systems, so this one won't take that long to train, and we don't think the training will be onerous or too time-consuming. We think we'll be able to get it done in a matter of days so that those trainers can go back into Ukraine and again get their teammates up to speed on the howitzers, which will be coming very shortly.
And I want to ask you about the reports from officials in Mariupol who say that up to 20,000 people are being held in filtration camps and thousands more are being deported to Russia. Can you verify those claims?
We can't verify the specific claims. We've seen some indications that Ukrainians are being forced into Russia against their will, but it's not clear that we have a total picture on this. But again, Andrea, this is, if it's true, and we certainly have no reason to doubt it, we can't confirm it, but it's just of a piece of the Russian brutality in this war and the degree to which they're willing to go to complete this war of theirs in a very terrible way.
What about getting the new military, some of the new weaponry into Ukraine? Is it becoming more difficult because of these Russian attacks, which are really widespread now all over the country?
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far, Andrew, to be honest with you. I mean, the flow of security assistance into Ukraine continues. I mean, there hasn't been we haven't missed a day here now in weeks in terms of material getting into the region. 8 to 10 flights a day, coming from the United States as well as from other partner nations, and then a constant movement on the ground through a variety of different routes and different ways of getting it in. That flow continues, and as President Biden has made clear, we're going to do as much as we can, as fast as we can, and so we're working on this next package of $800 million, which the president just announced last week. There have already been several flights from the United States of material in that shipment that has gotten into the region.
Do you think it is safe for a top U.S. official to go in?
I don't think
President Zelensky is asking.
I tell you, we take safety as a paramount concern. Force protection is always very, very important to us, Andrea. And I don't have any travel or destinations to speak to today, but clearly, whenever we send top government officials anywhere in the world, particularly areas where there's a security issue, we take that very, very seriously, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that their safety is ensured.
John Kirby from the Pentagon, thanks so much on the latest on the war in Ukraine. Oh,
you bet.
John, I'm sorry. I want to ask you a couple of more things about Mariupol before I let you go.
Yeah.
There had been projections that Mariupol would be lost within days. Now, they have withstood that. Can you give us any projection of for how long you think that they can hold up?
I'll tell you, I think anybody that puts an over/under on this thing or gives you a specific projection would be risking their credibility. I think it's just too. We just don't know. I mean, the Russians have put a lot of effort into Mariupol. Airstrikes, more than 10 battalion tactical groups now dedicated to that mission of taking Mariupol, and they have made it bloody. They have made it costly for the Ukrainians without question, and you can just see that from the imagery, Andrea. But on the other side, the Ukrainians continue to fight hard for that city. They know how important it is to the Russian efforts, but it's important to them. It's a big port city on the Sea of Azov, and they're fighting hard for it. And I think it would be, foolhardy to try to guess with any specificity how long the fighting is going to go on in Mariupol. The Ukrainians are still there, still defending that city.
President Zelensky had emphasized over the weekend just how important that is. Explain again just why it is so strategic and how big a blow would it be to the Ukrainians to lose Mariupol?
Well, look, so Mariupol sits right at the northern edge of that Sea of Azov, just to the south of the Donbas region, the eastern part of Ukraine that the Russians and the Ukrainians have now been fighting over for so long. It's a major economic port city in Ukraine, and clearly it has significant cultural value. So obviously the Ukrainians, just like they have been fighting for every city, Kyiv and Kharkiv and Chernihiv and Mykolaiv down further south, they've been fighting for all these population centers. They don't want to give any of them up, and with good reason. It's Ukrainian. But for the Russians, it's geographically important for a land bridge to get to Crimea, and also if in fact their goal is to cut off the Donbas region and to fix Ukrainian forces there so that they can't be used elsewhere in the country to defend themselves, then you can see the logic of trying to take Mariupol there at the southern end of that Donbas region. That's one of the reasons why you mentioned Kharkiv earlier when we were talking, Andrea, why that's so important, because that sits at sort of the northern tip of that eastern part of Ukraine. So you can see just geographically looking at the map why the Russians want to take Mariupol.
Okay, thanks for taking those extra questions. And now, John Kirby, thank you again.